The Zephyrian Deep Space Monitoring Station existed in the cold void between star systems, its crystalline structures catching and refracting the distant light of 1,000 suns. Commander Veltar had spent the better part of his adult life aboard this station, watching the endless dance of cosmic bodies and waiting for something, anything, that might justify the enormous resources his people had invested in this remote outpost. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, their civilization spanning millennia. They had explored much of their galactic sector, cataloging worlds and species with methodical precision. Their technology was advanced beyond most species' comprehension, yet they approached the universe with the careful caution of beings who had survived long enough to understand that knowledge without wisdom led to extinction. Veltar was reviewing routine sensor data when the proximity alarms began their urgent wailing. His 6 eyes focused simultaneously on different monitoring screens as his subordinates scrambled to identify the source of the disturbance. What they found defied immediate explanation. "Commander," his communications officer, Zendal, announced with barely contained excitement, "we have an artificial construct approaching our position. Configuration unknown. It appears to be primitive." Veltar's primary eyes narrowed as he examined the approaching object. It was indeed crude by Zephyrian standards, a simple metallic sphere with basic propulsion systems and what appeared to be rudimentary sensors. The craftsmanship suggested a species that had barely mastered interstellar travel, if this could even be called that. "Origin?" Veltar inquired, his voice carrying the authority of centuries of command experience. "Unknown system, Commander. The trajectory suggests it originated from a star approximately 47 light-years from our current position. Spectral analysis indicates a G-type star with a planetary system. The probe appears to have been traveling for several of their decades." Veltar found this curious. Most species that achieved space travel quickly developed faster-than-light capabilities. To launch a probe on such a journey using conventional propulsion suggested either remarkable patience or desperate circumstances. "Bring it aboard," he ordered. "Full quarantine protocols. I want to know what manner of beings would send such a rustic messenger into the void." The retrieval process took several hours. The probe was surprisingly small, no larger than a Zephyrian information crystal, yet it contained layers upon layers of primitive but ingenious technology. As their science teams began their analysis, Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to encounter something unprecedented. Dr. Canthel, the station's chief xenobiologist, approached with her initial findings. Her usually composed demeanor showed signs of genuine bewilderment. "Commander, the probe's origin species appears to be carbon-based, bipedal, with remarkable diversity in their physical characteristics. They call themselves humans, and their world Earth. But, Commander—" She paused, her breathing apparatus cycling nervously. "The information contained within this probe is disturbing." Veltar gestured for her to continue. "They've included what they call music, organized sound patterns that somehow convey complex emotional states. They've documented their history, their achievements, and their—" She hesitated again. "Their wars. Commander, these humans have been in almost constant conflict with their own species for their entire recorded history." This information troubled Veltar deeply. Most species experienced conflicts during their development, but typically such aggressive tendencies diminished as civilizations matured. Are they requesting assistance, warning others away from their system? Neither, Commander. They appear to be introducing themselves. The probe contains greetings in hundreds of their languages, mathematical constants, their location in the galaxy, and detailed information about their biology and culture. They've essentially provided a comprehensive guide for any species that might encounter this probe. Veltar felt a chill run through his core temperature regulators. They're revealing everything about themselves to unknown entities across the galaxy? Yes, Commander, and there's more. They've included images of their young, their cities, their weapons, their weaknesses. It's as if they have no concept of the dangers that exist in the universe. The implications were staggering. In all of Zephyrian history, first contact protocols emphasized caution, limited information exchange, and careful assessment of potential threats. These humans had launched their secrets into space like seeds on the cosmic wind, hoping they might find friendly soil. Over the following days, Veltar and his team delved deeper into the probe's contents. They discovered that humans lived on a world of extraordinary biological diversity, with complex ecosystems and weather patterns that would challenge most species. Yet these beings had not only survived, but thrived in such an environment. The humans' recorded history painted a picture of a species that seemed to court danger at every turn. They had survived multiple near-extinction events, engaged in conflicts with weapons capable of destroying their entire world, and yet continued to reach toward the stars with an optimism that seemed almost naive. What disturbed Veltar most was their approach to the unknown. Where Zephyrians would send automated scouts and maintain careful distance before attempting contact, humans appeared to embrace uncertainty with enthusiasm. Their probe contained invitations for communication, detailed star maps showing exactly how to reach their world, and even recordings of their children's voices. "Commander," Zendal reported, interrupting his contemplation, "we've received a priority transmission from Zephyrian High Command. They've detected similar probes entering other sectors. The humans appear to have launched multiple identical messages throughout this region of the galaxy." The scope of human recklessness was becoming clear. They had scattered their intimate secrets across light years of space, gambling everything on the benevolence of unknown civilizations. Dr. Canthel approached again, this time with even more troubling information. "Commander, I've analyzed their biological data. These humans are remarkably adaptable. They originate from a world with variable gravity, extreme weather, and dangerous predators. Their immune systems are incredibly robust, their pain tolerance extraordinary, and their capacity for both creation and destruction appears unlimited." "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "Commander, if these beings are representative of their species, they may be among the most formidable life forms we've ever encountered. Not because of their technology, which is primitive, but because of their nature. They appear to be apex predators that have turned their aggression toward exploration and creation." Veltar considered this carefully. The Zephyrians had encountered many species over the millennia, but none quite like this. Humans seemed to embody contradictions that shouldn't be able to coexist. They were simultaneously vulnerable and resilient, peaceful and warlike, cautious and reckless. "Sir," another technician interrupted, "we're receiving additional data streams from the probe. It appears to have activated secondary protocols upon detecting our presence." On the main display, new information began flowing from the human artifact. This secondary data contained more recent updates about human civilization, including their rapid technological advancement and their growing presence in their local star system. What they saw defied belief. In the time since launching their probe, humans had not only advanced their technology significantly, but had begun establishing permanent settlements beyond their home world. They were expanding at a rate that suggested explosive growth in both population and capability. "Commander," Dr. Canthel whispered, "according to this data, they've gone from launching this probe to establishing multiple space colonies in less than 50 of their years. Their development rate is unprecedented." Veltar felt the weight of decision settling upon him. The probe was clearly designed to establish communication with whoever discovered it. The humans were expecting a response, and by galactic convention, they deserved one. but the implications of contact with such an unpredictable species were enormous. The Zephyrians had protocols for dealing with dangerous species, but those protocols assumed civilizations that followed rational patterns of development and expansion. Humans appeared to operate under entirely different rules that prioritized growth and exploration over safety and caution. As Veltar stood before the human probe, watching its primitive but ingenious systems continuing to transmit messages of greeting and hope, he realized that his people were facing their first encounter with a species that might be fundamentally different from anything they had ever imagined. The probe continued its patient broadcast, sending messages of friendship and curiosity into the cosmic dark, unaware that its very existence had shaken one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations to its core. The humans, somewhere in their distant system, waited for a response that might determine the future of both their species and the wider galactic community. For the first time in his long career, Commander Veltar found himself genuinely uncertain about what course of action would best serve his people, or the galaxy itself. 3 cycles had passed since the human probe's arrival, and the Zephyrian Deep Space Station had become a hive of unprecedented activity. Ships from the home worlds arrived daily, carrying specialists in xenobiology, military strategy, and psychological warfare. What had begun as routine analysis of a primitive artifact had evolved into the largest intelligence-gathering operation in recent Zephyrian history. Commander Veltar stood in the expanded analysis chamber, watching dozens of his people work frantically to decode every aspect of human civilization. The chamber hummed with translation algorithms, holographic displays, and the nervous energy of beings who suspected they were looking into an abyss that might be staring back. Dr. Canthel had not left her laboratory in 2 days. Her initial findings about human biology had been disturbing enough, but the deeper they delved into human culture and psychology, the more unsettling their discoveries became. "Commander," she called out, her voice strained with exhaustion and something approaching fear. "You need to see this latest analysis. We've been studying their entertainment media, what they create for pleasure and relaxation." The holographic display showed scenes that made even battle-hardened Zephyrian warriors step backward. Humans, it appeared, entertained themselves with simulated scenarios of violence, survival, and conflict that would traumatize most civilized species. Their fictional stories celebrated individuals who faced impossible odds with nothing but primitive weapons and determination. "They call these action movies," Dr. Canthel continued, her voice hollow. "In their leisure time, they watch their own kind fight against aliens, monsters, natural disasters, and each other, and the protagonists always win through sheer force of will and violence." Defense Coordinator Morthak, a veteran of several minor conflicts with less advanced species, studied the displays with professional interest. "These are training simulations. They're preparing their population for warfare." "No," Dr. Canthel corrected. "That's what makes this so disturbing. These are entertainment. They enjoy this. Their brain chemistry releases pleasure chemicals when observing simulated violence and triumph over adversity." The implications rippled through the assembled scientists and military personnel. A species that found pleasure in conflict scenarios was dangerous enough, but humans appeared to have industrialized this pleasure. They had created vast networks for distributing increasingly elaborate scenarios of struggle and victory. "Show them the sports data," urged Dr. Zilmar, a specialist in species psychology. New displays activated, revealing another aspect of human nature that defied rational explanation. Humans had organized their recreational activities around competition, physical conflict, and territorial disputes. They gathered in enormous groups to watch their finest physical specimens battle each other in formalized combat sports. "They call it entertainment," Dr. Silmar explained. but observe the physiological responses of the spectators. Elevated heart rates, increased adrenaline production, tribal bonding behaviors. They're experiencing simulated warfare, and they love it. Commander Veltar absorbed this information with growing concern. Are they constantly at war with themselves? Not exactly, Dr. Canthel replied. They've channeled their aggressive tendencies into structured competitions and simulated conflicts. It's actually quite sophisticated. They've found a way to satisfy their combat instincts without destroying their civilization, usually. That word, usually, hung in the air like a toxic gas. The analysis teams had also been studying human technological development, and those findings were equally troubling. Humans appeared to advance most rapidly during periods of crisis or conflict. Their greatest technological leaps had occurred during their wars, when the pressure of survival had forced rapid innovation. They don't just adapt to challenges, reported Chief Technology Analyst Vectorn. They actively seek them out. When their environment becomes too safe or predictable, they create new challenges. They've deliberately ventured into dangerous regions of their world, undertaken expeditions that killed significant percentages of participants, and pursued knowledge that any rational species would recognize as too dangerous to acquire. The data supported this conclusion with horrifying clarity. Humans had explored the deepest parts of their planet's oceans, climbed its highest mountains, and ventured into regions where the very environment was hostile to life, all apparently for the satisfaction of having done so. Commander, Dr. Canthel continued, they've also documented something they call extreme sports. These are recreational activities specifically designed to risk death or serious injury. They participate voluntarily, often paying for the privilege. The holographic display showed humans throwing themselves from great heights with primitive fabric wings, racing vehicles at lethal speeds, and deliberately placing themselves in situations where survival required split-second timing and perfect execution. The participants' faces showed expressions of joy and exhilaration. Defense Coordinator Morthak's combat-hardened demeanor cracked slightly. They seek danger for pleasure? It appears so. And their documented history shows this behavior extending back thousands of their years. They've always been drawn to risk, challenge, and conflict. What truly disturbed the Zephyrian analysts was the humans' approach to survival itself. Most species, when faced with existential threats, focused on building better defenses or avoiding dangerous situations entirely. Humans appeared to respond by becoming more aggressive and adaptable. The probe's historical records showed that humans had survived multiple catastrophic events, natural disasters, diseases, and wars that should have ended their civilization. Instead of becoming more cautious, each survival episode seemed to increase their confidence in their ability to overcome any obstacle. They exhibit what they call optimism bias, Dr. Silmar explained. Despite overwhelming evidence that their universe is dangerous and unpredictable, they consistently believe that they will succeed where others have failed. This isn't ignorance. They acknowledge the dangers but proceed anyway. Commander Veltar found this psychological profile deeply unsettling. They're aware of the risks, but believe themselves immune to consequences? More complex than that, Commander. They appear to believe that risk itself is manageable through determination and preparation. They don't fear challenges. They see them as problems to be solved. The probe had also contained extensive documentation of human scientific advancement, and this data revealed another troubling aspect of their nature. Humans pursued knowledge with an enthusiasm that bordered on recklessness. They had split atoms to understand fundamental forces, despite the obvious weapons applications. They had manipulated genetic material to cure diseases, ignoring the potential for biological warfare. They had developed artificial intelligence systems, apparently unconcerned about the risks of creating beings that might surpass them. They research everything, Dr. Canthell reported. There appears to be no field of knowledge they consider too dangerous to explore. They actively investigate phenomena that could destroy them, driven by what they call curiosity. This revelation prompted an emergency consultation with Zephyrian historians. In their long experience, species that pursued knowledge without appropriate caution typically encountered something that destroyed them. The fact that humans had survived their own curiosity for so long suggested either extraordinary luck or capabilities that their technology level didn't reflect. "Commander," Communications Officer Zendale interrupted, "we've received new intelligence from our deep space monitoring network. Human activity in their local system has increased significantly since they launched their probe. They appear to be expanding their presence at an accelerated rate." The display showed updated astronomical data from the human solar system. In the time since their probe had been launched, humans had established permanent settlements on multiple worlds, deployed extensive satellite networks, and were apparently preparing for expeditions to even more distant locations within their system. "Sir," the analyst continued, "their expansion rate suggests they're not waiting for responses to their probe. They're proceeding with exploration and colonization regardless of potential contact with alien species." This behavior contradicted everything the Zephyrians understood about rational first contact protocols. Species typically paused their expansion upon sending out contact probes, waiting to assess potential threats or opportunities before proceeding. Humans appeared to be expanding aggressively while simultaneously broadcasting their location and capabilities to unknown civilizations. Defense Coordinator Morthak studied the expansion data with professional alarm. "They're either supremely confident in their defensive capabilities or completely unaware of galactic-level threats." Dr. Canthell pulled up another set of files from the probe. "Commander, there's something else. They've included detailed information about their military capabilities, not just current technology, but theoretical weapon systems they're developing. They're essentially providing a complete intelligence briefing to any species that finds this probe." The weapons data was indeed comprehensive, covering everything from their primitive nuclear arsenal to theoretical concepts for directed energy weapons and kinetic bombardment systems. What struck the analysts wasn't the sophistication of these weapons. Many were crude by Zephyrian standards, but the variety and thoroughness of human thinking about warfare. "They've considered every possible method of conflict," Morthak observed. "Biological, chemical, nuclear, kinetic, electronic. They've theorized about warfare in space, underwater, underground, and in their atmosphere. This level of comprehensive thinking about violence is unprecedented." Yet the probe also contained extensive information about human philosophy, art, and peaceful achievements. They had created magnificent works of beauty, developed complex ethical systems, and demonstrated remarkable capacity for cooperation and altruism. "They're paradoxical," Dr. Shilmar concluded. "Simultaneously, the most aggressive and most creative species we've encountered. They appear capable of extraordinary violence and extraordinary beauty, often from the same individuals." Commander Veltar realized that 3 cycles of analysis had only deepened the mystery of human nature. Every answer raised new questions, and every piece of data seemed to contradict other information about their species. As he prepared to compile his preliminary report for Zephyrian High Command, Veltar couldn't escape the conclusion that humans represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization, a species that thrived on the very challenges that destroyed others, that found pleasure in risk, and that approached the unknown with enthusiasm rather than caution. The probe continued its patient transmission, broadcasting humanity's message of greeting and hope, unaware that its very existence had forced one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations to confront the possibility that they might not be dealing with a typical emerging species, but with something far more dangerous and far more remarkable than anything they had ever encountered. The emergency session of the Zephyrian High Council convened in the ancient crystalline chambers beneath the home world's surface, where the wisdom of millennia was carved into the very walls. Representatives from across their civilization had gathered to address a single terrifying question. What should they do about the humans? Commander Veltar stood before the assembled council. His report complete, but his recommendations uncertain. The past weeks of analysis had painted a picture of humanity that challenged every assumption about civilized behavior and rational development. Supreme Counselor Alarith, whose wisdom spanned centuries, spoke with the gravity that the situation demanded. Commander Veltar, in your estimation, do these humans represent a threat to galactic civilization? The question hung in the chamber's rarefied atmosphere. Veltar had wrestled with this very concern throughout his investigation. Honored Counselor, the answer is both complex and troubling. Humans represent a threat unlike any we have previously categorized. He activated the holographic display, showing the assembled council the key findings of their investigation. Images of human achievements and destructions played simultaneously, magnificent art alongside devastating weapons, peaceful settlements beside scenes of warfare, expressions of love and compassion, contrasted with celebrations of violence. Traditionally, species that achieve interstellar capability follow predictable patterns. They either develop wisdom sufficient to control their aggressive tendencies, or they destroy themselves through those same tendencies. Humans appear to have achieved a third option. They have retained their aggressive nature while channeling it into expansion and exploration. Counselor Morden, representative of the military caste, leaned forward with interest. Are you suggesting they are a warrior species that has achieved stability through conquest? No, Counselor. That's what makes them so difficult to predict. They are simultaneously warrior and creator, destroyer and preserver. Their probe contains mathematical proofs alongside weapon schematics, children's lullabies beside tactical manuals, peaceful philosophy next to detailed instructions for biological warfare. The Council absorbed this information with visible unease. The Zephyrian understanding of species development was built on the principle that civilizations evolved beyond their primitive aggressive instincts. The idea that a species could advance while retaining those instincts challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of intelligent life. Dr. Canthel was summoned to present her psychological analysis. Her findings were even more disturbing than the military implications. Honored counselors, humans exhibit psychological patterns that are unprecedented in our xenobiological databases. They appear to require conflict and challenge for optimal mental health. Periods of peace and safety actually correlate with increased rates of mental illness and social instability in their populations. She displayed charts showing human psychological data across different historical periods. The evidence was clear. Humans functioned best when facing existential challenges. They have evolved in an environment of constant threat and competition. Remove those elements, and their social structures begin to deteriorate. They actively create challenges when none exist naturally. This is not a civilization that will peacefully settle into comfortable existence. They will continue to expand, explore, and seek new frontiers indefinitely. Supreme Counselor Alarith's ancient features showed deep concern. Are you suggesting they cannot coexist peacefully with established galactic civilizations? I'm suggesting they may not want to, Dr. Canthel replied. Their probe doesn't request permission to join galactic civilization. It announces their intention to explore and expand. They're not seeking guidance or protection. They're introducing themselves as they prepare to claim their place in the galaxy. The implications rippled through the chamber. Most species that achieved interstellar travel did so gradually, with careful consideration of their place in the larger galactic community. Humans appeared to be approaching space exploration as a natural extension of their territorial expansion. Defense Coordinator Morthak presented the military analysis, and his conclusions were equally sobering. Honored counselors, human military thinking is comprehensive and adaptive beyond any species we've encountered. They've independently developed theoretical frameworks for warfare in every conceivable environment and situation. The display showed human military doctrines, from ancient strategies to modern theoretical concepts. The breadth and sophistication of human thinking about conflict was staggering. More concerning is their approach to logistics and resource management during conflict. They've developed the capability to sustain military operations across vast distances and extended time frames. Their entire civilization appears designed to support expansion and territorial acquisition. Counselor Veldan of the Science Cast raised a crucial question. But surely their primitive technology makes them manageable? Their probe required decades to travel a distance our ships could cover in days. Morthak's response eliminated any comfort that technological superiority might have provided. Counselor, their technological development rate is unprecedented. In the time since launching this probe, they've advanced from basic chemical rockets to nuclear propulsion systems. At their current rate of development, they may achieve faster-than-light travel within a few centuries. More troubling, he continued, their approach to technological development is fundamentally different from ours. Where we perfect existing technologies through careful refinement, humans appear to constantly seek revolutionary breakthroughs. They're not improving their current systems. They're replacing them entirely with new paradigms every few decades. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humans weren't just another emerging species requiring guidance and integration into galactic civilization. They were a force of expansion and change that would inevitably disrupt the established order. Supreme Counselor Alareth called for a recess to allow private consultations among the council members. The debate that followed would determine not just the Zephyrian response to humanity, but potentially the future structure of galactic civilization itself. When the session resumed, the decision was unprecedented in Zephyrian history. Commander Veltar, Supreme Counselor Alareth announced, the Council has reached a consensus. The human probe will be returned to space immediately, with all evidence of our analysis destroyed. No record of this encounter will be maintained in our databases. Veltar was stunned. Honored Counselor, surely some communication is warranted. The humans are expecting a response to their message. No response will be provided. Furthermore, all Zephyrian vessels and monitoring stations will be withdrawn from sectors adjacent to human space. We are implementing a comprehensive quarantine of human territory. The magnitude of this decision was staggering. The Zephyrians were effectively abandoning an entire region of space to avoid contact with a single species. Counselor Morden explained the reasoning. Commander, in our analysis, humans represent the most dangerous form of intelligent life, unpredictable evolution. They don't follow established patterns of development, which means they cannot be anticipated or contained through conventional means. Their probe has demonstrated that they will share crucial strategic information with complete strangers, indicating either supreme confidence or dangerous naivety. Either possibility makes them unsuitable for standard first contact protocols. Supreme Counselor Alareth delivered the final justification. Commander, humans exhibit all the characteristics of an invasive species. They adapt quickly to new environments, reproduce rapidly, consume resources efficiently, and expand aggressively into new territories. Most concerning, they show no evidence of natural limitation mechanisms. The scientific data supported this conclusion. Human population growth, resource consumption, and territorial expansion followed patterns typically associated with species that overwhelmed and destroyed the ecosystems they encountered. In our modeling scenarios, Dr. Canthel added, contact with humans leads to one of two outcomes. Either they adapt to galactic civilization so successfully that they reshape it according to their aggressive expansion paradigm, or they view galactic civilization as a threat to be conquered. Both outcomes result in the end of our current galactic order, Morthak concluded. Humans cannot be integrated into existing structures because they will inevitably modify those structures to suit their nature. Commander Veltar realized the terrible logic of the Council's decision. The Zephyrians, despite their advanced technology and ancient wisdom, were choosing retreat over contact because they recognized something in humanity that they couldn't control or predict. "What of other species?" Veltar asked. "Shouldn't we warn them about the potential threat?" "Negative, Commander. Warning other species would require explaining our analysis, which would spread knowledge of human capabilities and location. We cannot predict how other civilizations might choose to respond to that information." The implications were chilling. The Zephyrians were not just avoiding humans, they were allowing other species to encounter them without warning, essentially using those civilizations as unwitting test cases for human behavior. Over the following days, the withdrawal began. Zephyrian monitoring stations went dark, patrol vessels returned to home ports, and all traces of their presence in human-adjacent space were systematically eliminated. The human probe was carefully cleaned of all evidence of analysis and launched back toward interstellar space, its innocent messages of greeting and hope continuing to broadcast into the void. As Commander Veltar watched the probe disappear into the cosmic dark, he couldn't escape a sense of profound unease. For the first time in Zephyrian history, they had encountered a species so unpredictable that their only rational response was complete avoidance. The probe continued its journey, carrying humanity's message of friendship and curiosity to other civilizations that would soon face the same terrible decision that had just torn through one of the galaxy's oldest and wisest species. Somewhere in the distant human system, people continued their lives unaware that their simple message of introduction had sent ripples of fear through the galactic community. They expanded their colonies, advanced their technology, and dreamed of the friends they might find among the stars, never suspecting that their very nature had earned them a quarantine zone enforced by beings they had never met. The probe's signal gradually weakened as it traveled deeper into unexplored space, but its message remained clear. Humanity was coming, whether the galaxy was ready or not. And one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had already decided they weren't ready to find out what that meant.